And we are on.
We are on. Exciting times, my friend.
To
On
say
land
the
and
least.
soil.
On the land and soil.
That is it.
Where would you rather be?
Obviously nowhere. Nowhere near the water. Land and soil it is.
I think of people who would hear this for the first time and they would be like, what on earth are they talking about? On the land and soil?
That is true.
They're not underwater anymore?
And a good friend of ours would introduce his talks with, you're all underwater. And it confused just as many people because it's the same thing. But it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Like when you come to really understand jurisdictions and who we are and where we are and all of that business. We are on the land. We are living and alive and beating hearts and running blood and so forth.
Absolutely.
Yep. No, it makes a lot of sense, and you cannot be a pirate on the water in that nature. For we have 2 feet and a heartbeat.
And if you're alive, you can't be in the land of the dead.
This is true.
Once you know, and you walk through the doorway to destiny, and you can never go back.
And that is it. Matrix over. That is where we're trying to get to. Yep. And that is a good place to start. Yes.
Well, that's probably a nice little intro for people to think about.
Yeah.
So who are we?
How did we get here?
Who am I? Who are you?
What the fuck is going on?
What is going on? 2022, seatbelts on, I reckon.
Indeed. Well, I guess we're talking a little bit about common law and our understanding of true law and natural law, as well as contract law and all of the different jurisdictions that apply in our life. And so where did we come from? Like in relation, how did we get to this point now? And I got a good story to start us with that. And it was in 2014. And I was just starting to run into kind of smart, more learned people than myself about this subject, and starting to have my brain cracked open about rights and different understandings, different perceptions of things that I hadn't really considered before, that when I applied seemed to ring true, and was just starting to really open my learning in a new way. And there was a talk by a pretty well-known bloke called Sasha Stone with New Earth Nation, and he was doing this talk in Fremantle in Western Australia, and I was asked to come along and check it out, and so I thought, it's big good information, so I attended this room. It was a Sunday afternoon in the middle of Fremantle town, and there was no parking anywhere. Like I couldn't get anywhere near the building, parked miles away, and it was street parking. And on a Sunday afternoon, and the council were normally pretty militant around Fremantle, so I was pretty aware of like getting a ticket and whatever, parked in 2 hour, and thought, whatever, just see what happens, and get to the venue, and there's like 1,000 people in this small little room, and I got there fairly late, so I opened the door, and like there's a billion bodies in there, so I find my way into the guts of it and found this one spot right in the middle of the room. So once I sat down, there was no getting up again. And so I'm sitting there for about an hour, and Sasha Stone's talking, and people are on about stuff, and I'm aware of my time of my car, I think, and just in the back of my brain, like my parking's up now, like any time from now. And I said to the bloke next to me, like just aware that my parking time just went up. And the dude looked at me like I was just such a fucking idiot. Like, like, what are you even doing in this room having a conversation about this stuff if you're still tripping about your parking ticket? Like just the look on his face, I'll never forget it. It was just such surprise and disdain and all of these looks on his, like, what are you even thinking about that shit for? Like, you're still wrapped up in parking, like you're still doing the council dance. And I recognised in that moment that I'd said something really stupid in the wrong room to say that. And in that moment said to myself, like, fuck it, when I get out of there, if there's nothing on my car, like if everything's fine, I'm with this program, I'm with it, and I'm not going to worry about this stuff again. And if there is a ticket on my car, this is all nonsense, and I'm going back to like paying attention to matrix programming. And so I just sat and relaxed, and I listened to the rest of the Sasha Stone talk, which was awesome. Hung around, spoke to people, and casually got back to my car hours later. No ticket, everything was fine. And that was it. And that was my real introduction to good information around understanding your rights and seeing through the false jurisdictions and people who were a long way ahead of me, who had already seen through small things like that, and just to put it to the test and realise it was an illusion. It was all just nonsense, and like they were talking about, and that was my starting point. And from there, I just continued to learn and run into smarter people, which is always good practice. And followed lots of good rabbit holes and lots of new learnings and knowledge. But that kind of started us off about 10 years ago now, and I've been kind of following this line of knowledge for a while.
10 years?
Yeah, at least.
You've got a pretty good head start on most.
Oh, a little bit, yeah. Wouldn't say full time, but yeah, certainly I run into people that know a lot more at different times and pay attention to what they can offer. Usually gets you through your life a little bit more easily.
Oh, absolutely. Because once you get a comprehension of all of this sort of stuff, it does make your life easier. It's less stress.
Yep.
Because fines...
That's right.
Why would you worry about a fine?
You don't worry
when
about
you
any of that
realise
business.
all a fine is an offer of contract.
Yep.
No, thank you.
Yep.
Declined. See you later. Move on.
No, it's a revelation when you start seeing everyone for business and just in the corporate and being their own sector. It's totally revelatory for most people, because you certainly take back a lot of power, and it's a big deal to understand all of that stuff.
Mm.
And common law starts you there, but there's more to it than that. You know, you end up in contract law sooner or later to understand that it's not just about being a man on land and soil. There's a whole other jurisdiction at play, and that is contract law, and you need to really understand that to navigate it, to keep your distance from it. Common law is a good starting point, but there's heaps more to it than that to navigate stuff, especially this year. Tyrannical governments and so forth. Governments. Name said loosely.
Yeah, you can only use that term loosely because that's a revelation for people in itself, that there is no government.
We do not have a government. I know.
There is literally no government in Australia at all.
It is a big revelation indeed. And to understand why that is, and to then recognise it just truthfully and honestly, and seeing it for what it is, knowing it's not hidden in any way, it's right there in plain sight, and that is to be registered as a business precludes you from being a government. It's really straightforward, eh?
They literally can't be.
You can't be a for-profit structure if you're managing people and you are of the people. It simply can't work that way.
And it just becomes, it's so obvious that they are a business, because they've been all about raising money, raising revenue for years. 2Ks over the speed limit, here's a $70 fine, this and that. Like it's all about money. It
doesn't work the way it used to work, and I think everyone notices that, but no one's really put the clear 2 and 2 together as to why, and can see the picture for what it is, and understand that it's just business. That a government was a government and then turned into a business, and now operates that way, and it just happened in plain sight, but behind everyone's awareness. No one saw that, no one got the memo that was happening, and so it just kind of happened in front of everyone. And so governments just turned corrupt simply because there was now a bottom dollar, there was a profit margin, and it wasn't always so. It wasn't the same way, a lot of people are still really fooled about that. Takes a bit to open your eyes and accept the fact that you're really getting bullied by tyrants, and tyrants with no authority.
Literally no authority.
It's a big
because
deal.
They are a business. It's like we say the old deli down the road. Like if someone turns up from Woolies and says, "Mate, sorry, but you've been parked here for 5 minutes too long. Here's a $500 fine." And they're in a Woolies outfit, what are you going to do?
Yeah, not so much Woolies.
No thanks. I've got no contract with you. Go away. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate your offer.
Yep.
It's very kind of you to think of me and think of this situation, but...
No thank you.
No thank you.
I decline.
Yeah.
And yet there's other organisations that we would accept it from, or we would have always accepted it from, like any kind of rules or laws or whatever. At some point there would be someone we believed that we should be subject to, and that's just simply not true. That the minute you're registered, you're equal, and that you're lesser than the living man. And so by virtue of that, there's really no power whatsoever over a living man. It's the highest authority there is under the Creator. And that is key.
That's where you want to be.
Indeed. Indeed.
Because literally, no one has authority over anyone.
Cannot under the Creator, only us under God.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it. The only time anyone could have any sort of authority over any of us is if we committed a crime, caused someone harm or loss. That's it. Other than that, there's no contract, there's no business.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
And there's a lot to be said for natural law and having a relationship with the Creator in your life. Because if you don't have that, you don't really come from a natural law standing. You don't come from a place whereas we are created, that we are also answerable to a higher force, that we were created. We come from somewhere. That context is really important to understand a sort of humility in the way that we deal with each other. If you don't have God in your heart or in your life, you're kind of the king of your own shit, you know. You've got a very skewed perspective over your creative level of control, and you think you're in control of way more shit than you are. And so it's pretty important to have a contextual understanding, if not relationship, with the Creator in your heart. You know, it steers you in the right direction in the way that you stay as a living man dealing with other living men. Keeps you honourable in contracts, all of that sort of stuff, you know, rather than just going out all for one and just pirating everywhere.
The thing about natural law, I find, is it's like moving into another realm. Like, actually, if you want to understand natural law, you've really got to do that inner work to actually move through all of the rubbish and everything, the indoctrination, everything that you've been taught over the years, to come back to that, because it's so basic, but it makes so much sense.
It's true, but it's so foreign.
Yeah.
Yep, so foreign to what we know.
That people can just do whatever they want, literally within reason, that you're not causing harm or loss to anyone.
Yep.
Other than that, what does it really matter?
Yep.
The thing that catches people is, oh, there's got to be this, there's got to be all these rules and this and that, and to a degree.
If you really think about it, though, there doesn't have to be all these rules. There doesn't have to be registrations. There doesn't have to be licenses or fees or any kind of monitoring, any kind of assessments or updates, or like most of that's basically nonsense. It's just administration. And if it serves what our common good is, then awesome. But if it no longer serves you because it just bogs down your progress and charges you money, it doesn't serve the living man anymore. And so it's abolished. And that's just the nature of any creation that's no longer serving its creator. It gets recreated. Yep, can't have process above people.
No, well, that's right.
Doesn't work.
It's just the simplest thing of when you go down the chain, the creator's at the top,
always,
men and women underneath.
Yep, and then our creation's beneath us.
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly.
And then rules of engagement beneath even that. And that's essentially contract law. It just says, how do we engage with each other? What are the terms of our agreements when we're dealing with other people? You know? It's just your own kind of personal policies and stuff, but it's not even in the realm of the living, who automatically know how to deal with each other. It's for trade. It's a whole other, you know, extended jurisdiction. It's not even our natural one.
The learnings, I tell you what, the learnings over the last year or so.
Especially over the last year. Yeah, we've both been on roller coasters.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, at least they've been going next to each other in the same direction.
True.
It's good to have a fellow brother on the roller coaster.
Oh, yep. It makes a world of difference.
Laugh and scream as you cruise on past.
As you cruise past.
Yeah.
This is like, why I say you got a good head start. 10 years of it, sort of, you can slowly get a decent comprehension of it.
Yep.
But I remember the very first Freedom Rally that they had in Sydney, it was chaotic. It was crazy. So a couple of dudes, they rocked up. It was in Cathy Freeman Park, and a couple of dudes rocked up on, there's kind of a stage set up there in the corner, and couple of dudes were playing the djembe drums, and people started sort of cruising in and dancing and coming together and all this and that. And it was mad. It was a mad vibe. But within no more than 2 minutes, the police pounced on these dudes, took their drums, arrested them, took them away. Yep. And it was just chaos from there.
Yep.
I was cruising around with me little old blue corporate Australian flag.
Yep.
And a police officer come up to me, and he was saying, "Oh, you're in breach of all these rules and all this and that, and we're gonna have to arrest you." And I was like, "Oh man, I had nothing. I didn't know what to say or do. I was just like, I don't want to get arrested." Yep. So I just kind of like walked away.
Yep.
And they kind of followed me, but I worked my way back around, joined the rest of the people, and kept going. But at that point, I was like, I was done. I had no idea what to say or do or nothing. I was like, I would have just got arrested because I didn't know my rights as a living man. Didn't know. So I was like, well, this has got to change. And from that point, what a learning curve.
Indeed. Now you know you can't get in that trouble. There is no trouble.
How can I?
That is it.
And who are they going to charge? Who are they going to arrest?
Yep.
Not me. Well, I'm not surety for a name. I'm a living man. Am I Dylan Passmore? No.
No, you are not.
That's a name.
But do you have a name?
Do I have a name?
Yeah. Like what's your name, man?
Well, there's a name that I'm known as, commonly known as.
Sure.
You know,
you don't have a name? Everyone's got a name, man. Come on.
Well, I would suggest that my appellation might be Dylan John of the Passmore family.
Yeah, yeah.
But really, I'm just a living man.
Could be anything.
I can't be a name. How can anyone be a name?
And that itself is a pretty big revelation to people in the space of natural law, that you are not your name, and that you didn't name yourself. You never selected your name, and you never agreed upon your name consciously. There's no contractual basis whatsoever for you accepting that name that you didn't create for yourself. And so there is no ownership of that name whatsoever. There's no right to that name, even if you claim it to be yours. It's a pretty big deal. And to realise that everything we're talking about is not based on you, it's based on your name. So no name, no problemo.
Essentially.
That's a big deal.
It is.
To understand that the name is the birthing of your corporate fiction and has nothing to do with your living status.
It is literally
yes,
all on the name. Because
so
a corporation can't rule over a living man or woman.
Very easy to say, I do not have a name, for I have not named myself. You can call me anything you like, including Byron, but it's all just hearsay, really. It's all just words.
So how does that look in court then? If we rock up, if Byron Mulligan rocks up in court, and the magistrate says, is Mr. Mulligan here today? Are you Byron Mulligan?
Well, I represent Byron of the family Mulligan, but I'm not Byron Mulligan. No, I represent that name in all of its corporate jurisdiction, but I am not that name.
So you're not Mr. Mulligan?
No, I'm certainly not.
Well, then where is Mr. Mulligan?
I represent Mr. Mulligan, who is only a name at the corporate level. Mr. Mulligan is a corporate fiction. Mr. Mulligan is a name on a registration certificate that relates to this matter now and has nothing to do with myself, who is a living man.
Case dismissed.
Can't help you, Byron Mulligan. You know, and to simply claim ownership over that title without identification with the title is the key. And to remember that you can be nameless if you want to, and nothing falls over and everything's fine. And to say, I don't have a name. You're not batshit crazy if you really just give it some thought. You didn't name yourself. And so you don't really have a name unless you have a God-given name that you know, But that's not the name we're talking about. We're talking about the birth certificate name, the registration certificate name. And that name's got no bearing on anything. It is purely fictitious and corporate. It's a business name.
Totally.
And so we take control over our business name in the corporate fashion, as if it's a copyrighted material. Simple.
And that changes the game completely.
Yes, it does.
Because if you walk into court and straight away, are you Mr. Mulligan? Yes, I'm Mr. Mulligan.
Yep, you're in.
Bang, you're done.
Joinder applies.
Straight away.
Yep, and that's the strategy in all engagement, your ID first. And it's simply to tie you to the name, because then a whole bunch of stuff can happen to that name that doesn't relate to you. And now it is relating to you because you've joined to the name. No, we never, ever carry or agree to ID. We are not that name.
No.
And that may be a likeness on your ID, but that is not you.
The whole entire show really is fictitious. All of it. Everything to do with the corporation and all their dealings. It's a fictional world.
Yep,
it's all made up.
It's in admin only. It doesn't apply to any living being. It's just an administration world. It's just all a realm of names and numbers and words. But it doesn't touch any living man or woman or activity thereof.
So how does it all begin? How does all of this stuff begin? From the birth certificate, from the moment that you're born. We're literally born into this system, which is set up to enslave living men and women.
Yep, as commodities, and who don't know their commodities. And so your name represents a financial commodity in a financial system. And you just don't realise that you represent an account, you represent a resource value, and that there is a market playing around with those resource values, and that your name is one of them. And so to join with your name, you're then subject to all of the stuff going on with that trading and messing around of your true value. And you never receive that value. Like, that's usufruct in principle, that none of yours, while you're owned by your master, will ever stay as yours. Everything you do is for the higher authority that you are signed over to. And that's the same now. The registration certificate means we're automatically signed over. And so any wealth, any resources, anything accrued by us isn't ours. And it can never be yours as long as you identify with that registration, which is to say you're copyrighted to somebody else. Can't move once you've done that. And then other IDs, your driver's license, all of that are simply founded on having a birth certificate. You only got all of that because you were able to prove a name that you agreed to be. That registration certificate's the key.
It is.
And to decline that registration certificate, to decline any account with birth, deaths and marriages, to unwind all of that. That's the document.
That's the one.
That is the one.
Yeah.
Yep, it's a big deal. And then to move purely as a living man without a name who represents a name. And then you can represent Dylan of the family passmore. You can represent any corporate aspect of self as you like, but to know that you are not that. And to not ever self-identify in the first person.
And you can't be. You literally can't be a name.
That is it.
When I first found out about this, I saw a video on the straw man, and it basically explained that you're not your name.
Yep.
Your name is not yours.
Yep.
And it just blew my mind.
Yep.
Because I was like, what on earth? What are you talking? What's this about? I always thought all of my life, I'm Dylan Passmore.
The penny drops though.
I am Dylan Passmore. Up until the point I seen this video, and it's like,
no.
Well, hang on a second. What even is my name then? Hang on.
Yeah. I have a name?
Do I have a name?
Do I have a name? Do I have a natural name and I forgot because someone named me this?
Yeah. And you've heard it all of your life.
That's right. These are the questions.
I guess that's why it's such a a hard thing for people to break out of because it's totally like
Dude,
all of your life.
to say that that's just not your name, but you actually don't and cannot have a name, that's a revelation. That's a big deal to get that and to accept that, because it breaks out of that status of I know who I am, this is my name, this is my profile. Like, you need to disengage from that profile and the need to have one and the need to be profiled by other people. That profile is just joinder to the name. You don't want it.
Absolutely not. Not interested. I'm not interested in being surety for any corporate business or agents or any of that sort of stuff. It's like, where did I agree to be surety for your debt?
You did not. There is no written agreement, for you were far too young to sign it. Unlikely.
When you're about 30 minutes old,
Yes.
and it gets signed off on your birth certificate.
Yep, not by you.
Not by me. No, thank you.
Can't help you.
But this is the thing, like we were talking about common law and all this and that, where a lot of people come unstuck with claiming common law, and it's a massive problem that needs to be addressed, is the problem of usufruct, where you're claiming common law and you're trying to say that you stand in common law, yet you still got all these contracts with the corporation. You must still have a driver license, rego, your birth certificate, this and that, wickety whack, whatever. You got all these contracts with them. You're still tied to them.
Still on the water.
You're still underwater.
Yep.
Until you actually rebut those claims that have been made against you.
Yes.
And wind back all the contracts that you had with the corporation.
Yep.
There's no more contract with us.
It is a big misunderstanding that we do instinctively and are truthfully living men and women on the land, and that all of that is true. But operationally, it hasn't been that way for a very long time. That's not the additional jurisdiction that we're living in. And it doesn't make sense to have a jurisdiction beyond common law, because it's all just fully made up. Like, there isn't an inherent jurisdiction beyond common law. It's just natural law as we all know it. And so to have contract law is really foreign to the spirit, because it is wholly made up. It is a wholly constructed jurisdiction or realm. And so most people don't recognise they're in it, because they don't actually recognise it in their spirit. They just see other living men and women and think that's what's going on. And so it takes a bit to recognise that there's a whole, like, created fictional jurisdiction going on and at play, and that we're in play. And to see that and then start to decline out of it and roll your way back out is very important. But to see it, first of all, is the most important thing. Most people don't see it for what it is, or in its entirety, and to the level that we have been contracted, to the level that we are in business but with so many entities, and don't realise that we're in business. It's a big process to roll all of that back.
Absolutely.
It's the only way to go. It's the only process to really do, and the only really thing worthy of your time in the long run, and for your family as well.
Yeah.
And starting to get off that ocean, getting back onto land legally and lawfully.
And it's a process that everyone has to do themselves, because it's like no one's going to do it for you. No one's coming to save anyone. But that's the problem, is people expect that or want that. They want someone to come and save them, to do it all for them, all the rest of it. It doesn't work like that. People have got to take responsibility for their own lives. And it's like, I get we can all be angry about it. We've all been shafted. Of course, like I was ropeable for a long time, until you really come to the point where it's like, well, no one's going to change it for you.
Yep, got to get on with it.
So let's get on with it. Let's do it. work it out.
But there is that phase where you get angry, and there's that phase where you're confused, and like you all go through that phase. You know, it takes a bit of time to digest it all and get mature again to get to that place. But we all have those early stages of that confusion and getting angry at that shit and all of that sort of stuff. You know, it's healthy to go through that for a time. But I mean, we've both met people that have been doing that phase for far too long and haven't come back to center again and come back to what it's really about, which isn't about fighting pirates on the water. It's just about getting back to the ground. And once you've done that, then the battle is over. You know, the piracy in your day is over. And yeah, I think that's a little tricky for some folks that have been really programmed in this for a while, that when they snap out of it, they're kind of all guns blazing, you know, and find it hard to put that down. And so they miss out on the progress and the learnings that need you to be calmer, need you to come back and start seeing things a bit more clearly again and working with people and not just fighting next to people, which is totally different. And it's refreshing to see around us, you know, a lot of very proactive and mature heads able to come together and do that and start to get on with the business of really rebuilding back on the ground and outside of that corporate jurisdiction, you know, back to real people who can see each other and touch the same stuff.
Back to the real world.
Back to the real world.
Leaving the fiction.
Right.
But I think that's a natural and a healthy process to go through as well. Like the whole the anger thing, and like that's fair enough. Like get it out of your system. Be angry.
Yep.
Righteously angry.
Yep. Because
you have been shafted. People, everyone.
Yep. It's a healthy response. It's a proportionate response when you find out what's been going on. You should be pissed. You should be shocked. Yeah. You should be anxious. You should be all of that stuff at the start. Yeah.
But don't stay there.
No, you can't stay there. You can't get mobilised in fear by it. And that's the case. So many people have already uncovered that and have been hit by that kind of that shockwave to make that discovery. But some people have got hit by that a long time ago and they're a long way past it now. And they've gotten over the initial shocks of that revelation and have started building now on the land. Like they're there and they've set up camp with a bunch of other people that have done it too. And it's important to know for people is that the early or middle stages of their journey of awakening in our social times, that there's a lot of people ahead of you, and don't be scared to just jump off the cliff, as it would feel like at a lot of times. There's a bunch of us down the bottom and we've got coffee and everything's comfortable, like jump off the cliff, you know. There's people ahead, and don't be scared. Take the leap of faith. You're never going to end up on your own, but you won't find out who's already set up ahead of you unless you can let go of where you are. And it's important to take those leaps of faith and to have your courage and to follow your gut, to follow your guidance and your intuition when you know everything that's going on around you is nonsense and it's wrong. You've got to stop it and find your own path. And yeah, it is surprising to see how many people did the same ahead of you and just took a step of courage and faith ahead of you and are now established and are now building with each other. That bit's encouraging.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it is like a leap of faith too, but really, well, what happened with me with the driver license, I knew that my driver license was about to expire, and I was like, I just couldn't bring myself to renew it. I could not be a part of it because I knew it was all fictional. It's a made up world, this and that. It's a fraud, and it's a fraud to conceal a fraud. So I just couldn't do it.
Dropped it.
Couldn't do it. And what's a driver license anyways?
You don't need
it's a license to operate a commercial vehicle in commerce. Am I in commerce?
It's a good thing you're not doing that, eh? You're just travelling.
Yeah, just travelling.
You don't need no license to travel.
Yeah.
Yep, and you are not in commerce, so you're just travelling, living man.
Just a living man.
That is it.
Going about my day, travelling.
Travelling the land.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so even that in itself is somewhat of a leap of faith to do that, and then to go on and to rebut all assumptions, presumptions that I've got nothing to do with the corporation. There's no contract between us anymore. at all. I have actually reconveyed myself, the living man, back to the land and soil jurisdiction. That's where I'm at. And that's a bit of a leap of faith, because all I've ever known is the other world. And you know how it works. You know you've got insurance, you got this and that, and you know the process of things. There's a lot of figuring out to be done once you take the leap of faith, but at the same time, feels like the best thing I've ever done. And I knew I had to do it. There wasn't any other way.
So how does one go about reconveying? Like, what do you know about that?
Where do you want to begin? So
maybe just the basics, if people haven't heard of like that term. Like, what does reconveying mean?
So basically, like you want to reconvey your political status back to the land and soil jurisdiction. Because as long as you're in contract with the corporation and you're holding your license, your regos, all of that sort of stuff, you are under maritime law, the law of the sea. And that's your political status. And that's where you can get in trouble with all the ridiculousness of what's going on now. So basically, I've renounced everything to do with the corporation. There's nothing there. All contracts have been finalised, finished, and the name has been reconveyed out of their jurisdiction back onto the land and soil. I now hold ownership over the names. So it's outside of the jurisdiction of the corporation, and it's now protected by copyright laws. So if they try to joinder me to a name, be it a magistrate, police, anyone, well, they can find themselves in a lot of trouble for fraudulent joinder, inland piracy, all these different crimes for trying to joinder me to a name which they want. It's not even in their jurisdiction anymore. So there's that they've got to deal with. But they're basically trying to enslave me. If they try and arrest me or whatever, that's basically enslavement.
Entrapment by that name.
Enslavement. It doesn't look good on someone's record.
Indeed.
So 9 times out of 10, if you can convey that well, I think you're going to be left alone.
Yep. So a mass declining of all of those primary contracts we have with government and other services, and bringing ourselves back to our living status, which is not contracted with any other third-party entity of any kind, whether it be for driving or for birth or anything at all, just to simply come back to self and dealing with ourselves as living men and women, and that is all. It's a heck of a lot simpler and a simpler way to operate, and brings us back to exchange and partnership and collaboration, and a little less industry, which is a little more impersonal. You know, we're not always together in industry. When we're back with each other, we can start collaborating and getting back to true entrepreneurship and heart-centered entrepreneurship, working better for each other and with each other. It's important stuff.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And it happens from a ground level, from a community level. And that's where it's got to come from. Because it's the people who need to control the country and the way that we want to live, how we want to go about our daily lives.
Yes.
What we all agree to.
We really forget that, don't we? That like the people are in charge, and we
Of
really
course,
forget that any entity or body or organisation can't be above us. Like they are subservient to the people who are the Commonwealth. That's such a big deal to really get your head around and start operating like that you don't answer to any statutory or regulatory body, for they are of our creations, and that law jurisdiction does not supersede common law.
People forget that because, like, all of their lives, they've been told to do this and shaped in a certain way. This is what you got to do this, do that. This is how you live. This is it.
Yep.
Now you got to put on a mask. Now you got to be poisoned. Now you got to like all this stuff. And it's like, hang on a sec. Who are you? I don't have to do any of this stuff. Where's your authority coming from? Come on, man. It's not happening. No, thank you. But people just go along with it because that's been their lives. They're used to it. They're used to not even thinking for themselves.
There's no independent thought at all.
Mm.
Just hear a half-assed command and go for it. It's in the word mandate, isn't it? Like, it only takes a bit of a stop and a think about that word and what that word means. There's no true authority in the word alone. But you have to actually stop and just pause just for a moment to think about the word and come to the logical conclusion that a mandate isn't a law. Like, it doesn't take much to come to that conclusion, but the amount of people that are just hear the word mandate and hear holy law and don't consider anything beyond it, like, it really is mental. When it just takes a simple moment to stop and consider the word and realise that it's not law. We're not talking about the same thing. It's not a revelation, but man, it is for some people who just don't see it, don't hear it. You know, they're so automated in the programmed response. It's pretty tricky.
Yeah, totally. But it's a massive learning curve because, like I was saying, I didn't know anything about this sort of stuff.
Yep.
Even like a year or so ago.
Yep.
All I knew was everyone was being told to put on a mask, and I was absolutely not doing that.
Not doing that.
Not interested.
No. I think there's a level of courage in there too. Like, some people are ready for the revelation because to have it means a level of shock. It means a level of dissonance and of breaking down old ideas. And some people are more able to handle that than others. Some people have a more courageous kind of outlook to buffer that kind of shock and to readjust if they need to readjust. Some people aren't quite as strong at handling that internal change and that gear change.
Yeah, that's right.
And to have that robustness as part of your character is pretty handy.
Yeah,
because you've got to deal with a lot of mind changing things and belief changes. It's pretty big for a while.
Yeah, definitely.
And I empathise with people that freak out and just say it's all too much and I can't handle all of this information.
Yeah, because there's a lot there, and you know, not everyone is like us in the sense where they just say, "No, we're not doing it."
No,
a lot of people are sort of like a bit more subservient or whatever, and that's nothing wrong with anyone. That's just how some people are. They just don't like conflict. It's just the way that it is. So they go along with it, but then, you know, things get worse and worse and worse, and the demands get greater, and all of a sudden, you're at the point of tyranny. So, yeah, that was my thing. For me, it was just like, you just want me to put on a mask. I'm not interested. And so the learning came from there about mandates and this and that and how it was all unlawful, and the journey continues.
To me, it highlighted that an organisation calling itself a government could ask you to do the wrong thing en masse and penalise you for not doing that wrong thing, and that you automatically know it's the wrong thing. And until recently, the government would have told you that it was the wrong thing, but now it's telling you to do that same wrong thing and penalising you if you don't do it. And it was simply to realise that that's what was happening, was to know that the government was making people do the wrong thing and threatening them if they wouldn't do that. And I couldn't get past that simple way of looking at it. And that's the dissonance that people just can't get their head around. Like, how would the government ask you to do something to hurt yourself and other people? They couldn't, they wouldn't. Well, what if they did? Like, what would that mean? Let's just say, you know, would you question other things? Like, you know, to what level are you prepared to accept that? Because if you can accept that, like, there's a lot of other nonsense going on there. You have to kind of concede, look, if the government really is basically tracing us and cornering us into a digital little hole and taking us out en masse while they do all of that, like, what else is going on? What else is cooking? It's a whole rabbit hole, and I can appreciate in the back of people's minds, like they start to put two and two together, and it gets very scary. You'd need some courage to just even face what's being presented to you as you do the math.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty full on.
Well, it is. It's a terrifying agenda.
Yes. It is a terrifying agenda when you see it.
Yeah. So when I first found out about the whole New World Order sort of thing, it was 2016, and I was in horrors. When I found out about it, I was like, oh no, because I could see it happening. I could see all these things taking place, because we'd been asking questions for a long time prior. Just with the way things were going, like we were obviously being sold out, manufacturing was closing down, everyone was losing their jobs. So we were like, what's going on here? There's something shifty going on. There's some shady stuff happening. And then I found out about that was their agenda. I went, oh no. Because it seemed to be there's very few people that were aware of it, you know. So it's kind of like, well, what do you do? What on earth?
Who do you tell?
Who do you tell? Who will listen?
Yep.
You find out about all this stuff and you can see it happening, but all of a sudden you're crazy, you're a conspiracy theorist and all this sort of stuff. But so for a lot of years it was just like we knew something was going to go down. We didn't know what it was going to be or how it was going to
do.
Yeah, going to unfold. Yeah, and we didn't know what to do. We just knew something was coming. Yep. We didn't know how to stop it. We didn't know if there was anything we could do. Yep.
It was going to take something like a COVID, wasn't it, to like really get everyone up and start mobilising people to take some action of some kind.
Well, it had to come to a breaking point.
Yeah,
that's the
people
thing.
Have been aware for a long time, but just couldn't quite piece it all together and to know how to respond, to know what course of action was going to be the right way.
Yeah. And that's the way that I see it. It's like it had to come to a point of absolute tyranny before people were going to like...
Had enough.
Say, hang on.
Yep.
Who are you guys? You're a business? No thanks.
Yep.
And once you find that out, that's all they are. They're only a business. Oh, man. Doesn't it change the game?
It changes all of the game. Because then you're like, well, where is our government? Where did our government go? You know? When the hell did this happen? And to realise that it happened in the 70s, that's a long time. And that we've been hoodwinked very illegally for a long time.
Absolutely.
Yep. And
the only thing that keeps it going is consent to it.
It's the grand illusion right in front of our face. And none of this information's hidden. No, none of the stuff that you've been learning is hidden. When you're ready for it, it's right there. And it all makes sense when it's time. And this is just the thing of jurisdictions or realms. Like we live in them every day. And we cross from one into another in terms of the conditions every day, and we don't always realise it. Yep, the corporate realm is a bit of a wily one because it's invisible and we're engaging with it all day long. And we're getting penalised by it and don't know why.
Because you didn't do as you're told.
That's it. Yep, did the wrong thing. Oh, only my name does the wrong thing. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I am eternally innocent and pure.
That's right, though. It's like, well...
Only that word may be incriminated, and that word is just hearsay to me.
Yeah, totally.
Can't help you. Doesn't mean anything.
Have I caused anyone harm or loss?
Obviously not.
Well, then there's no contract. Thank you very much.
We decline.
And the whole thing of... decline as well. What a learning curve there.
Indeed, that was the real penny drop for me around dealing with the corporate industry and corporate space, to understand that it was only corporate and nothing else. That's really all contract law means, is that you're dealing with a business, no matter how they come across, and that to be a social service of any kind, whether that be a government, a legal, a court, any type of service, police for people, that the minute you become for profit, you can't fulfill your duty. It's unconstitutional that you can't be for profit and truly serve your fellow living man and woman. And so by virtue of an ABN, you are for profit. That just changes the nature of what you are, and it firmly places you in that corporate jurisdiction. And the terms of corporate engagement are clear, like contract law is very clear in the way we interact, and it has nothing to do with other authority. Like, it's back to equal consent, it's back to equal understanding and agreement to a contract between two parties. There's nothing more to it. And so the minute you're a corporation, there is no more external authority. No matter how big you are, no matter what you call yourself, it doesn't mean anything that it did. They are not police, they are not government, they are not courts. They're the deli up the road.
Literally.
That is all.
That is all.
That is all.
But everything looks the same as it used to.
And that's the jurisdiction thing. Once you understand that you're in a new jurisdiction now, that you see everything that's in front of your eyes, but you see it all differently. You have a different lens to translate what you're looking at, and it makes sense of everything. It makes sense to understand then why government departments are licensing and fining and feeing you up to the fucking eyeballs. Like how can that be? Well, it's because they're a for-profit business. Doesn't it make... Yeah, that makes sense. And it's just that we haven't registered that our government is now not a government. It's a for-profit business. It's been operating that way for ages, but without that being officially declared, people have just accepted the confusion that their government is taxing them to death and go, well, that's just what happens. Like, no, it's not. That's not just what happens. That's not the right way to do it. It never was, and you know that. Like, the reason why you're raging against it is because you know it's wrong.
Exactly. Totally. And that's where I was at for a long time. I knew it was wrong.
Yep.
And the rage of literally like the taking back the country. That's like a perfect example. That song is a perfect example of where I was at, and a lot of people I know were at. We're just sick to death of being shafted, but didn't know how to go about it. It was like we're out here, we were working out in the sun, it's 45 degrees, and we're just getting shafted. The amount of tax we're paying, we're totally sick of it. So it comes out in song. We're making a stand for the working man. We've had enough, and we're taking back this land. And once you can move past that, get that out of your system, it's a different playing field. But like I was saying before, I feel like it's a natural progression of something you just have to go through.
Yes, there's definitely stages of learning. I don't think you could really accept it to go right to the last page and just be given the last page. There's bits that you need to understand along the way. You need to understand the law of the land and natural common law. You need to understand contract law, and you can't really get one until you've learnt the other. And so then you can come back again, because then you know what you're dealing with and what you don't want to deal with, and which jurisdiction you're in any given time, and how to stay where you're meant to be, to not fall back into the false one that you didn't know you were in.
And it takes a lot of research, really, because they're always out there trying to entrap you back into their jurisdiction.
Yep.
Always.
Yep. Lots of practice, lots of talking with your friends, always just fine-tuning and correcting what you know, the way you speak. Digital contracts were a big one for me to understand now. Like, a lot of the time when you hear a contract, you think that it's a discussion between two parties and a bit of paper that has some writing that says stuff and both parties sign it. And now a digital contract is as simple as a terms and conditions on an app. It's anything that looks like a tool to help you, like MyGov. You know, like so many times now, like contracts just aren't what common law people would have in their minds. It's not an agreement between two living men that sign something on a table, you know. It's a different concept entirely. So to know now that you are fully contracted in more ways than you know, because you didn't just sign a bit of paper. You didn't do it in front of another living man. You know, the nature of the way even contracting happens now. It's no one updated us that all of that was just like signing a contract. And when you explain it that way, you go, well, that's obviously it is, but you didn't see it that way when you did it. You didn't think of it in terms of contracting. It was just terms to get an app, terms to get a program or whatever. That's a really big deal to understand now, that even contracting is different. In the digital environment, the way we are still tied to that environment, it doesn't relate to land-based practices. It's something else entirely, you know, and we just haven't realised that yet. Totally. When you do, you start looking at all your electronic terms and agreements and things that you've signed, and there's a shitload of them.
Yeah.
You think, wow, I'm fully embedded in that digi world.
Yeah. And it might only be something on an app that just pops up on terms and conditions, accept. Or you got to accept it if you want to use it.
That's right.
Bang.
Updated terms and conditions if you want to keep using it.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's it say in the fine print though?
Yep. And do you ever read it? And what would it mean if you didn't like it? Would you just cancel the app, you know? Like, it's all based on complacency and you know, convenience. I've already got it. I want to keep using it. I just click yes. And the way to manual get stuff done, if you have to close it, like all the incentive is just to agree.
Totally. Because there's that much stuff that you go through in your day, so much information. You just want to use this app.
Yep.
It's come up, terms and conditions. Oh, whatever, man. Just go. I want to use it. I need it.
It's brutal.
Click on it, bang. All of a sudden, you're in contract.
Yep, it's brutal.
Brutal. That's the word.
Anyway, reconveyance removes us from all of that arrangement and brings us back onto land where there are no contracts between yourselves and other parties. Understanding that contract law is maritime law, meaning the law between interactions between us and them. Common law being the law of the land that we all share and may have our own patches of that land, but common law is the law of us. Maritime law is the law of us dealing with them, and what are the rules of engagement or terms and conditions of dealing with them. Well, common law doesn't recognise them, and so there's no need to have a rules of engagement jurisdiction because it's just us. We're just the one us. And so to bring us back to that one us means we don't require contracts between us. There are no contracts within common law and within common space because there is only one group of us on the land, one group of us living men and women. Contract law requires a whole other party and a fictitious party to be doing business with, and we don't need to do that. We stay in our rightful standing all the time, and we do not agree to contract with any other body, whether it be via digital service or a physical contract or whatever. We must always be clear that we are signing a contract and doing business with someone. And it doesn't mean that you can't, like you can still contract and do business as you want to, but to do it in your rightful standing as a living man, living woman, means that you are representing your commercial entity being your name, and that is the representative engaged in business, not you personally. And that's very important to navigate and represent your name as your commercial property. That is the representative in the business arrangement, should you want to do that. But at no time is it you who are in that arrangement.
You almost look at it as a tool. Like your name becomes a tool for engagement.
Yes, it is. It's exactly what it is.
That's how you use it. That's how you use your name. Because you are not the name, as we were saying.
No. And any business we do is founded upon the use of that name. That without that name, you're simply in your natural standing. And so you require that name to do business with anybody. It is your commercial tool, exactly like you said. And so we have to have it to do business with others. But to not identify with it is key. And you can utilize that tool without saying it is me, without joinder and without identifying with it. That takes a little bit of practice to get used to navigating your name from a purely third person point of view, where you're always referring to it but never as self.
Yeah, you are never it.
Yes.
That's why
it's always that.
You can only be commonly known as.
Correct. You could be referred to, but that's just hearsay. Commonly known as is still just hearsay. That's what people say.
Yeah, that's what people call me. People call me Dylan John Passmore.
Yeah, but don't
Dylan, whatever they want to call me.
True.
Doesn't make me Dylan John Passmore.
Call you a giraffe, mate.
You can call me anything.
Doesn't mean that you are.
I've been called plenty of things in my life. Don't you worry.
That is it.
Doesn't mean I'm any of them.
Call me 100 times a day. Doesn't make it true.
Do you feel like we've blown enough minds?
I think a few have been blown. At least had a laugh. And have hopefully chosen to come back to land and soil. Land and soil is where it's at.
It is.
Yes.
And that's the thing too. Along the way, man, you got to have a laugh.
You do need to have a laugh because it is extreme level nonsense.
Extreme level nonsense.
It is. It is just Twilight Zone business out there.
Yeah.
And to watch people now in 2022, like never more, have you seen just a whole subgroup of our society and one whole group of people just spellbound, completely doing their own thing, just following the program, following the output frequency, and where everyone else is just, what are you doing? Like, it's crazy. And you got to have a laugh. You got to stay in good spirits. You got to stay positive in your leadership and the way we do stuff. Yeah, you can get angry and all that business, but don't get bogged down in that stuff. Like, don't set up in just wallowing. And it's time to get moving and living men and women unite, find each other, come back to each other, re-galvanise and start revisioning.
100%.
Start getting on with stuff, Like, don't worry about this division anymore. It's time to move past the division and find your people on your side and just rebuild with who you've got. Like, we're all here. We're all here no matter where you are in your journey. Like, there's people on the same path as you and lots of people are ahead. So we're always safe. It's worth the risk. It's worth the risk to learn and to branch out and to hold your ground.
Yeah. And people with open arms too, because we want as many people as we can get. We want everyone on land and soil. We want
lonely with your eyes open.
Yeah.
Yeah, the more the merrier.
Yeah.
Once you get something, share it with people.
Yeah,
they want to know that you get it too. It's very refreshing.
It's all just information. Just as you learn it, let it flow, let it go. Let people get it. Exactly. People need it.
Share it on,
yeah. Because it's not our information.
No,
it's just information.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
Don't bottleneck the truth.
Never. That's why I always say, like, freedom should be free.
Freedom is free. That's what makes it what it is.
100%.
And you can't sell it or bottleneck it or place conditions on sharing it with other people. Once you know it, you have an obligation to share it.
We really do. It's our duty.
Yep.
To pass it on, because everyone needs to know it.
Yeah, I think that's the logical, mature position you come to, isn't it? That once you really get it, you can't sit on it. You can't not share it. You have to help people.
Totally.
Yep, helping people is the key.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, because everyone needs a hand. Like, there's a lot of questions that need answering and...
a lot of nonsense.
Yeah, a lot of nonsense. But hey, we're here.
We are here.
Right, I reckon we'll leave it at that, eh?
Good on you, brother.
That'll give people something to think about.
Chew on that.
Cheers, brother.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, folks.
Rock and roll.